The night was still and thick with an unsettling tension as I approached the grand entrance of the Whitmore Hotel, a towering structure that loomed like a fortress in the moonlight. The ornate architecture, once magnificent, now seemed to sag under the weight of its own history, with peeling paint and flickering lights casting eerie shadows across the marbled floors. I had just landed a night security job at this once glorious establishment, and while my nerves were buzzing like the electricity in the air, I pushed through the heavy doors, ready to begin my shift. The lobby, filled with the scent of aged wood and dust, was nearly empty. The receptionist, a weary woman with sunken eyes, handed me a set of keys and a crumpled piece of paper with rules hastily scribbled on it. "These are important," she warned, her voice trembling slightly. The first rule sent a chill down my spine. Never unlock room 318 for any reason, even if you hear loud knocking or the sound of a crying child. If you accidentally open the door, close it immediately and leave the key in the lock. That guest is not anything near human and must never be allowed out. I tucked the note into my pocket, unsure if it was a prank or something I should take seriously. The second rule made my skin crawl. If the elevator opens on its own while you're on your rounds, do not step inside, but press the close button repeatedly. If you hear soft music playing inside, run to the stairwell and don't look back. Taking the elevator leads to places no one has returned from. I nodded, dismissing it as an oddity, but a part of me felt the weight of the words. The third rule was just as ominous. If you hear music coming from the ballroom, you must enter, but do not dance. Watch from the doorway for exactly 30 seconds and leave. If anyone invites you to join, nod but stay outside the room. They will not like rejection, but entering the ballroom means you won't ever leave, but most of the time, this happens at around 3 a.m. I glanced at the ornate clock above the reception desk, its hands frozen at midnight, the ticking absent. The fourth rule was more bizarre than frightening. Every night between 1 a.m. and 1:15 a.m., you must set a table in the dining hall with one empty chair facing the window. Make sure not to touch the chair after this. If you do not want to find out what will happen. My mind swirled with confusion as I absorbed the final two rules, the fifth echoing ominously. If at any point a hallway that you know well seems shorter or longer than before, do not proceed. Turn around and retrace your steps carefully. If you don't, you may end up in parts of the hotel that shouldn't exist anymore. And the sixth, as dawn approaches, the final guest will sometimes appear. He will ask you a simple question. Is my room ready? Do not answer with words. Instead, hand him the key to an empty hotel room and step back. If you answer verbally, he will show you his true form if you survive long enough. With a deep breath, I stepped into the eerie quiet of the hotel, my flashlight beam dancing along the walls, illuminating the faded photographs of smiling guests long gone, their eyes seeming to follow me as I walked. The first hour passed slowly. The silence was almost comforting, broken only by the occasional creak of the building settling or the distant sound of water dripping from a leaky pipe. I made my rounds, checking each floor, the cold air sending shivers down my spine, and though nothing felt amiss, an undercurrent of dread gripped me. As I neared the elevator, I felt an inexplicable urge to press the button, but I remembered the warning and opted for the stairs instead, my footsteps echoing in the desolate hallways. The silence seemed to stretch on forever until I finally heard it. A faint melody wafting through the air, the sound of a piano drifting from the ballroom. I hesitated at the doorway, peering inside to see a lavish scene frozen in time. Couples twirled in elegant dresses and sharp suits, their faces hidden in shadow, the music enchanting yet foreboding. I forced myself to remain still, counting 30 seconds as the invitation hung heavy in the air. But just as the final note faded, a voice called from the shadows, urging me to join them. Heart pounding, I shook my head and stepped back, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, as if the dancers had turned their attention towards me, their gazes boring into my soul. I stumbled away, my breath quickening, and as I passed the hallway leading to room 318, I heard a soft thud against the door, a gentle, pleading knock followed by the unmistakable sound of a child crying. My instincts screamed at me to turn and flee, but my curiosity tugged me closer, reminding me of the first rule. I resisted, the chilling reminder echoing in my mind, and instead continued my rounds, shaking off the unsettling feeling as best I could. The clock struck 1, and I made my way to the dining hall, setting the table with trembling hands, placing an empty chair facing the window, my heart racing as the shadows danced along the walls. I did not touch the chair, keeping my distance as the weight of unseen eyes bore down on me, the air thick with an unspoken tension. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught my attention in the corner of my eye, and I turned just in time to see a figure dart away into the darkness, leaving me breathless. I blinked, my mind struggling to rationalize what I had seen. It was just a shadow, I told myself, a trick of the light, but deep down, I knew something was lurking just beyond my sight. Each tick of the clock felt like a countdown to my impending doom, and as I finished my tasks, I decided to return to the front desk for a moment of solace. The lobby was just as I had left it, but as I glanced up at the ornate clock again, the hands had moved forward, and it now read 1:05 a.m. I felt a shiver race down my spine. The night was slipping through my fingers, and I could feel the atmosphere growing heavier, thick with anticipation. The air felt electric, and the shadows elongated ominously as I prepared for the next rule to unfold. I returned to the second floor, and as I passed by a hallway, I felt an odd sensation wash over me. The hallway appeared longer, twisting in ways that defied logic. Panic gripped me, but I recalled the rule: do not proceed. I turned sharply and retraced my steps, each movement deliberate as I focused on the familiar sights. Yet a sense of dread grew, filling the air around me like a suffocating shroud. Suddenly, the silence shattered with a deafening crash from the ballroom, the sound reverberating through the walls, drawing me toward the doorway again. The music had stopped, replaced by whispers that slithered into my ears, beckoning me closer. Against my better judgment, I edged towards the entrance, peeking inside only to find the ballroom empty, the tables overturned, chairs scattered like broken dreams, and in the center of the floor stood a single spotlight illuminating a small, ornate music box. The whispers intensified, swirling around me, urging me to approach. My pulse quickened as I reached out, feeling a strange compulsion to touch it. But just as my fingers brushed the delicate surface, I remembered the rule and jerked my hand back. The room went cold, and a chilling laugh echoed from the shadows, sending a shiver through my core. I stumbled backward, desperate to escape the oppressive atmosphere, and as I turned to leave, I caught a glimpse of a figure standing in the corner, its form distorted and flickering like a broken TV. I blinked, and it vanished, leaving me breathless and shaking. I sprinted down the hallway, the adrenaline surging through my veins, knowing that I had to return to the front desk, to the safety of the lobby. But the building felt alive, the walls shifting as if they were closing in on me. Every corridor twisted into another, and I fought against the disorienting sensation, recalling the rules as a lifeline. Suddenly, The elevator doors slid open with a soft chime, inviting yet sinister, and against my better judgment, I approached, pressed the close button repeatedly, the unease gnawing at my insides. I heard it, the haunting melody beginning anew, echoing through the empty space. I turned and sprinted towards the stairwell, my feet pounding against the floor, the whispers from the ballroom trailing behind me, urging me to stop, to listen, but I wouldn't. As I descended the stairs, the faint sounds of laughter rang in my ears, sending chills down my spine. I reached the first floor, my heart racing as I burst into the lobby, my chest heaving with panic. But as I took a moment to gather myself, I saw him. A man standing at the reception desk, his back turned towards me. I took a cautious step closer, and a rush of dread washed over me as he turned, revealing a gaunt face with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through my very soul. "Is my room ready?" he asked in a voice that was both familiar and terrifying. Instinctively, I reached for the key to an empty room, but a primal fear gripped me. I couldn't utter a word. The man stepped closer, his form shifting, and I could feel the very fabric of reality fraying at the edges. My hand trembled as I offered the key, backing away slowly, never breaking eye contact, hoping against hope that my silence would be enough to satisfy whatever darkness lurked within him. His lips curled into a wicked grin, revealing teeth too sharp for a human, and for a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the shadows behind him writhe and pulse. The temperature dropped, and I could see my breath clouding in front of me. But the man simply took the key, his fingers brushing against mine, sending a jolt of ice through my veins. I stepped back, heart racing, feeling the air around me shift, the oppressive weight lifting slightly as he turned, the shadows clinging to him like a shroud. I knew that I had done the right thing by not speaking, but as he walked away, I felt a twinge of uncertainty. Would this encounter haunt me for the rest of my shift? As I resumed my patrol, I was acutely aware of the heavy silence, the atmosphere thickening with each passing moment. Every creak of the building felt like a whispering voice warning me to turn back, and yet, I pressed on, the rules etched in my mind like a mantra. The clock ticked closer to 3 a.m., and as I walked through the second-floor corridor, I was suddenly drawn to room 318. The silence deepened, and a knot formed in my stomach as I approached the door, remembering the warning against opening it. The knocking resumed, soft yet urgent, and the sound of the child's cries echoed in my mind, pulling at my heartstrings. "Please, let me out," a voice whispered from behind the door, pleading and desperate. My hand hovered over the handle, the urge to help battling against the instinct to flee. The rules throbbed in my mind like a heartbeat, the first and most important reminding me of the danger that lurked beyond the door. I stepped back, my resolve hardening, and instead turned to face the stairwell again, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest as I continued my patrol. But as I made my way to the third floor, I felt the weight of dread settling over me, and every instinct screamed to turn back. Instead, I stood at the end of the hallway, peering into the dimly lit space. My flashlight flickered, casting long shadows along the walls, and then I saw it. A figure standing at the far end, silhouetted against the window, its form shifting like smoke in the pale light. The tall, dark shape turned slowly, revealing two impossibly bright white eyes that seemed to pierce through the darkness, locking onto me with a gaze that felt both predatory and curious. Panic surged through me, but I remembered the rules, the unyielding warnings echoing in my mind. I couldn't look away. I had to face this entity, whatever it was. So I stood my ground, heart racing as it began to move closer, its body twisting and contorting in unnatural ways, each step deliberate and menacing. The whispers grew louder, and the air thickened with an unspeakable dread as it approached. Yet I held my ground, refusing to look away. The figure seemed to revel in my fear, its grin widening as it drew nearer, its grotesque movements defying all logic. I felt my heart hammering in my chest, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. Yet I focused on its eyes, forcing myself to remain steadfast, knowing that if I faltered, it would mean my doom. As it drew closer, I could see details that made my stomach churn. A flesh-like texture, veins pulsating beneath the surface, and an aura of darkness that surrounded it like a storm cloud. It beckoned to me with a slow, deliberate gesture, and for a moment, I felt an inexplicable urge to join it, to step forward into the shadows. But I fought against the instinct, clenching my fists as I remained rooted to the spot. I felt its gaze penetrating me, searching for weakness, and as I stared back, a chilling realization washed over me. I was its prey, and it would stop at nothing to ensnare me. Just as I thought I might falter, the figure suddenly recoiled, its face twisting in rage, the shadows flickering violently as it vanished into the darkness. I took a shaky breath, the tension in the air dissipating slightly, and knew that I had survived that encounter. But the victory felt hollow as I turned to continue my rounds, dread settling in my gut. The clock ticked on, each minute stretching into eternity, and as I made my way back to the lobby, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon me, the air thick with an unsettling presence. As dawn approached, I made my final rounds, praying that the end of my shift would bring some semblance of peace. The lobby was quiet, but the feeling of dread lingered like a storm cloud on the horizon. I could hear the faint sound of footsteps echoing behind me, and as I turned, I was met with the sight of the gaunt man once again. He stood at the entrance, his expression unreadable as he approached, but I remembered the final rule. I needed to act quickly. He was searching for something, and I wasn't about to let it be me. I reached for the key to the empty room, my heart pounding, and without a word, I handed it to him, stepping back cautiously, feeling the oppressive weight of the atmosphere shift. He accepted it without a sound, his hollow eyes searching mine, and as he turned to leave, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had followed the rules, evaded the horrors of the night, and as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the windows, I knew that I had survived. The hotel was waking up, and I realized that the true terror lay not in what lurked within those walls, but in the darkness of human fear itself. I had faced the unimaginable, and while I had escaped, I would carry the weight of that night with me forever. I waited no longer, grabbed my belongings, and left the hotel. As I moved further and further away from the hotel, relief washed over me as it faded into the rising sun.